Hello viewers, welcome once again to our ongoing series Mendelism and Beyond. Today I think we would go a little more beyond Mendelism because we wish to talk about linkage. We know that Mendelian principles had been well established, and once they were rediscovered by the three famous scientists, then the world came to know as to what were the implications of Mendelian principles, what was segregation, what was independent assortment. But then soon after, a lot of researches were initiated to look into the possible variations, ramifications and aberrations, if any, which were resulting from the established Mendelian principles. Just to recapitulate, the dihybrid cross, the famous dihybrid cross of Mendel, we find on our screens that the genes are segregating independently, giving us the ratio of 9:3:3:1, and this concept was very well established in most of the crosses, not only in garden pea but in other plants, and William Bateson himself established the whole idea in animals too. But then let us ask ourselves a question to begin with. Is the type of independent assortment to be seen always in all the organisms? Is it a must? The answer is perhaps no. And the answer can be further illustrated by explaining the idea that, if you remember from our earlier lectures, I never mentioned that Mendel undertook a cross between, say, the character, the gene for tallness, that is for tall and short internode, and the nature of the pod, that is whether they were inflated or whether they were constricted. This cross, we really don't know whether he performed this cross, at least it has not been reported in literature. Very interestingly, the genes for these two characters, they reside, both of them, they reside on chromosome number 4 of garden pea, and they are lying so close to each other that had Mendel performed or reported these crosses, perhaps the answer would have been very, very different, because the results would have been wavered. Why would have been so wavered? Because they were not following the normal independent assortment. The answer is simple, that they were linked. So that is the topic that we have today of linkage. Let us first trace the history of how linkage came to be recognized. You know, in the year 1901, now after Mendelism was rediscovered, people now started looking more towards chromosomes, and it was the beginning of the new branch of genetics, namely cytogenetics. There was a scientist by the name Montgomery who established for the first time that only the maternal and paternal chromosomes, they have to be associated at the time of fertilization. So for the first time he really mentioned the equal participation of both the sexes in fertilization. And the American scientist Walter Sutton, he confirmed the above views because he had studied at length the process of meiosis in grasshopper. Now another scientist, the German zoologist and cytologist Theodor Boveri, in the year 1902, he demonstrated very effectively that in sea urchin there are different chromosomes of a set, and these particular different chromosomes are actually responsible for different qualities of the organism. So that means there has to be a complete set of chromosomes which is essential for the survival of a particular organism. If that set is not there, perhaps the organism would not be able to survive. So that means all these discoveries by the year 1902, they really were pointing towards a very high degree of parallelism. between the inheritance of say Mendelian factors, which we now call as genes, and obviously this happened during gamete formation, and the behavior of chromosomes during meiosis, and a very nice parallelism was obtained, as you can see on your screens. This parallelism would mean that the Mendelian factors, say for example A and B, they are separate chromosomes. Then as far as their segregation is concerned, at the time of cell division, they do go to the different poles, as is seen by the image of chromosomes. And in addition, these particular genes, namely capital A, capital B, small b, they are assorting independently of the inheritance of another one. So that means we can have various combinations at the time of meiosis. So that means that it was then realized that chromosomes could be perhaps the bearers of heredity. So that means there are different gene pairs, they are acting independently, and therefore a conclusion was made that perhaps these genes or the factors that Mendel was talking about, perhaps they were located on the chromosomes. It is this generalization which is now popularly called as the chromosomal theory of inheritance or heredity. We also call it as the Sutton-Boveri theory. So Sutton was very clear about many aspects, although he had not much of experimental proofs to illustrate his point. But then he said that the chromosomes are the bearers of the units of heredity of genes, and since the number of genes is much larger than the number of chromosomes, it is very obvious that each chromosome must contain a large number of genes. And since the chromosomes are moving as units during meiosis into the respective gametes, that means all those genes which are located close to each other would have a tendency, that is, when they are on the same chromosome and close to each other, they would have a tendency to be inherited together. So it was therefore expected that all the genes that were located on a single chromosome would move to the same pole during the process of cell division. As a consequence, logically, such genes will not show independent segregation, and since they are being inherited together, this tendency to remain together in their original combination during inheritance is called linkage, although the term linkage was not there when Sutton and Boveri worked. So this means that the Mendel's law of independent assortment would be applicable only when the genes are located in different chromosomes, as we saw on our first slide, but then the linkage would refer to genes which are located on the same chromosomes. So how can you expect similar results to be there with linked genes? So each of these species of the animals and plants would have a specific number of linkage groups. We will like to spend some time on it a little late. So that means all these ideas were crystallized by Sutton himself. Unfortunately, he didn't have experimental proof for his predictions. So the real experiment actually started by the two scientists, the English scientists William Bateson and Punnett. As you can see on your screens, they had started their experiments on Lathyrus odoratus, and the varieties having different colors, different pod shapes. And if you remember from your earlier lectures, that Lathyrus odoratus always behaves a little differently from Pisum sativum, in the fact that it also was the experimental material for the discovery of incomplete dominance. Let us look at some of the crosses in a generalized manner. Two parents differing in their flower color and in the pollen grain size and length were chosen as parents. Red flowers with long pollen grains was crossed with white flowers with short pollen grains. In the F1 generation, one found that both the all the members of the F1 generation had red flowers and long pollen grains, no doubt still then, because it meant that the red flowers and the long pollen grains were the dominant characters. But then when it came to the next generation, the obvious conclusion one would have drawn was that it was 9:3:1 situation. It was not so. It was seen that in the F2 generation, the number of parental classes was much more, that it was something like overrepresented, and the non-parental ones were underrepresented. So this was a ratio which was amounting to say something like 24.3:1:1:1:7.4, and this was unheard of. So this was a very aberrant type of a ratio, not conforming to the 9:3:3:1. In other words, among the 803 F2 plants that were got and the classes they were overrepresented would now prompt us to comment upon the chi-square method. Normally we are using chi-square method in these crosses to know the goodness of fit, null hypothesis, and so on, and see whether it is the probability. But now in this case, the chi-square statistic to test for these discrepancies is actually not needed at all. Why? Because the flower color and pollen length don't seem to be segregated independently to that extent. And it is the reason why we are getting so many of the parental phenotypes, and they are overrepresented. So that means in this case the chi-square value, if we take of this 533.6, which is much more than the critical value, the theoretical value of 7.8 when we are using 3 degrees of freedom. So that means the null hypothesis is rejected. There is no question between the expected and the observed results being anywhere near, and therefore we would have said that null hypothesis was there if the genes were unlinked. But then in this case, the hypothesis of independent assortment of these alleles is outrightly rejected. So this indicated that perhaps the genes for these two characters, namely flower color and pollen length, they were located on the same chromosome. That is why they were giving different types of results. On your screens, let us try to now justify this cross with the help of the notations for alleles. The capital R and capital L, if they are going to remain on the same chromosome, then the other parent would also have the small counterparts, and in the F1 we find that all the progeny are red and long. Mind you, R and L are on the same chromosome, so they would tend to be inherited together. Now there can be only two situations possible. Either there is no crossing over at all. If there is no crossing over at all, obviously we will get non-recombinant chromosomes, and if there is crossing over, then we will have the recombinant chromosomes. Now the question we are asking ourselves, how many? So Bateson and Punnett, on the basis of these experiments, they put forth a hypothesis which they called as the coupling and repulsion hypothesis. And this formulation was there primarily to explain how we were getting these unexpected F2 results of this dihybrid cross. Now they performed a test cross between the F1 and the recessive parent. Let me remind you, learners, that a test cross is a must to ascertain whether the behavior of the genes on a chromosomes is actually linked or not. So that means in a generalized way, we say in the F1 generation, this is the actual cross, that is between the purple and the red flowers, and in the next generation we find in the F1 that all the plants had purple flowers and the long pollen grains, indicating as to which character was the dominant one. However, in the F2 generation it was found that the result was not to the tune of 9331. It was something like 284, 221, 221 to 5.5. Now, the test cross, you have to be very careful in observing these test crosses, because there is a very minor difference and one can get erroneous ideas. On the left hand corner, you would find on the top that capital B and capital L are together. So that means this cross 1 shows that both the dominant, and then look at the other parent, both the recessive characters, they are present in the same parent. In the F1, now we have a double heterozygote with the dominant characters. But then when the F1 is crossed with the double recessive parent, which means small b and small l, now the test cross ratio which one would have expected on the basis of Mendelian studies would have been simply 1:1:1:1. That means 25% of all the progeny, but then the case was very, very different. As you can see on your screens, the blue long were 7 to the red round on the other end also 7. Only the blue round and the red long were 1:1, and the blue long and the red round was 7. So that means this was something like a 14:2, that is 7:1, a ratio between the parental offsprings or the parental characters, which were much more frequent as compared to the less frequent ones, which were the recombinants. So that means the recombination was less. In other words, there was a tendency for these genes to stay together. So they said that capital B and capital L, they have been taken from one parent, and likewise the small b and small l, they are tending to remain together. This they qualified as gametic coupling. They were intelligent to substantiate this idea on the basis of another cross. If you look at carefully the parents now, the capital B is not coupled with capital L, it is going to the other parent. So capital B and small l is one parent and the other parent is different. In other words, in the second cross, both dominant and recessive characters are present in different parents. Of course, the result is the same in F1, because still we are going to get double heterozygote and still we are having a selfing, and after that if we perform a test cross, now the results are absolutely opposite. Earlier in the first test cross, the results were 7:1:1:7. Now the results are 1:7:7:1. What does it indicate? It indicates that capital B and capital L, they are taken from different parents, and likewise the small b and small l, now they don't see each other eye to eye. In other words, they are not tending to remain together. They are somehow repelling each other. That is, they want to stay apart. And this was the idea of Bateson and Punnett to call it as repulsion. So that means Bateson and Punnett said in their hypothesis that the genes belonging to the same parent are in a coupling phase, and they are having a tendency to enter the same gamete and getting transmitted together in the offspring. In sharp contrast, the two alleles, if they are coming from different parents, they are in a state of repulsion phase, and therefore they would tend to remain separate and pass on to different gametes and remain apart in the offspring. It was a very good idea, and on your screens you would find that therefore we could have two different types of heterozygotes. The heterozygotes could be coupling as well as repulsion heterozygotes. As you can see very clearly, capital R and capital L belong to the same chromosome, whereas capital R and capital L are located on different homologous chromosomes and not on the same chromosome. So that means we could have coupling and repulsion of this side. This was a very nice idea. Later, much later, Professor J.B.S. Halden, he replaced the terms coupling and repulsion by two alternate terms, and these two alternate terms were cis and trans. So that means what Bateson and Punnett said as coupling was in fact cis phase, and the trans phase was the new name for repulsion. So that means the hypothesis was good. Unfortunately, it could not answer many questions. How do you then account for independent assortment? If the genes are staying together, how is it that some genes are only staying together and the others are not? How is it that certain genes are repelling each other and the ones which are not coupling each other? But before we go into the details of the solution of Morgan's hypothesis, I would like you to note two notations which are very, very important, which would help you in your genetics dictionary and using the right frame of terms. We would never use the figure that I have shown you as capital A and small a together, because A and small a would never occur on the same chromosome. They have to occur on, because they are the allelomorphs, and therefore they have to be on the homologous chromosomes. Likewise, the second error which we normally perform is that we have to follow a certain order, and this order would be that if we are taking capital A and capital B in a homologous chromosome, we cannot have B or A. So that because A and B are non-allelic, so with A you have to have either a capital A or a small a, but not B in any case, and vice versa. So that means again we end up this discussion with a note that's very strange that Mendel could not catch the idea of linkage, although in 1961 Lemprecht he demonstrated that the 7 characters that Mendel shows, the genes for which were residing on 4 chromosomes, namely 1, 4, 5 and 7. And if you look at your screens carefully, I started my discussion with asking a question: what is going to happen on chromosome number 4? That is, when these two genes are so close to each other, they would have a tendency to be inherited together. And how could you therefore get the results of 9331? I am sure if Mendel had performed this cross or reported, the results would have been very, very different. In our next lecture, we would like to then move forward from this particular theory and reach the actual ideas of linkage. Thank you.